Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a lovely day so far. So in today's video I am talking you through my personal top 10 books that I have ever read. Now it is worth noting that I have two very separate categories, I suppose, themes of books that I like to read. I love a rom-com-y, lovey-dovey, boy meets girl, they fall in love and they live happily ever after. I love that sort of book. I also love a crime, thriller, murder, who did it, let's figure out this murder kind of book. And I'm aware that they are two very different books, so if you're only here for like the thriller books, you're not interested in people falling in love, I will put a timestamp down below where I talk about those ones because I'll do that at the end. But I want to start with like the rom-com-y chick flick sort of books first, because my favourite book of all time is in that category, and it's this one here. This is The Keeper of the Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. Now I first read this at the start of lockdown 2020. Just the whole world was in a completely different place, so I feel like I want to read this one again now and like remember it probably in a different way because the world is so different now. I feel like that would be quite an interesting thing just for me to do. Anyway, this follows the life of someone called Laura, and she is the personal assistant of someone called Anthony Perdue. Basically, Anthony has collected up lost items for all of his life, and it goes into like the backstory behind all of these lost items, and he tries to get them back to the people who have lost them, and Laura helps him sort through all of these completely random items. I mean, he keeps buttons, he keeps biscuit tins, he keeps all sorts of random things, and the backstory behind that and how the story ends, and I'm not going to ruin it, but how the story ends, it made me cry because it was so wholesome and so lovely. It's just a really heartwarming, lovely book. If you're going on holiday, I would really recommend this one for like around the pool. It's just, it makes you believe that there's good in the world. The story and all the characters, they're just, it's such a lovely story. I really love it. I have read a few from Ruth Hogan. This is my favourite one. They are all really good. I would recommend her as an author, but this is definitely my favourite one. Similar to that is one that I don't actually have, so I will put a picture up of what the cover looks like, but I'm sure you've seen loads and loads about it recently because a film has just come out that is based on the book, and it's Where the Crawdads Sing, and you know it has to be a good book when they make a film out of it, and I am almost reluctant to go and see the film because I love the book so much. Now I will say it took me quite a long time to like get into it and get into the story, and I'm in a few like online book clubs and things, and other people have said the same thing, so it is worth persevering with. It's a really lovely book. Again, it's really descriptive, like the words are almost like poetry, the way that the author like describes the landscape and all things like that. It's so descriptive and so immersive that you feel like you're actually there. You feel like you can feel the wind in your hair as she's going across the marshland in her boat, and all of these different things. It's just so beautifully written. You feel for the characters, you want the best for the main character Kaya. If you read, oh now what's it called, Of Mice and Men, I think, if you read that in school, and the like language used where it's almost written as the words are spoken in that character's accent, if that makes sense, that really helps build the shape of the characters. And that was another one that I read in probably a couple of days, again at the start of lockdown, and it's another one that I would definitely consider reading again now. I love that one so much that I gave it to my mum has read it, I think my mum's friend has read it, and then now I've just recently given it to my mother-in-law to read. It is such a beautiful book, but it does take a little bit of getting into. I would say from about halfway, if you can get to the halfway point, then it really gets going and you really get into the story. But I did find the first half a little bit slow for me. I like to be really grabbed like at first, but that one does take a little bit more getting into. Another one that was sort of similar to that is this one. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. This is by Gail Honeyman. This is another one that took me a little bit of getting into, and again, the characters, you really feel like you want the best for Eleanor. Like, you can almost sense how sort of vulnerable she is, and you really want her to work through the problems that she's going through. It's another one, all three of these so far I would recommend for like a holiday book, for reading by the pool, for reading on the beach, you know, all of those sorts of things. They're really easygoing, lovely books to get yourself into, that make you feel good, that make you smile, all of those good things that you want from a holiday book. One that I wouldn't recommend for taking on holiday, but I would recommend reading, and I will start this by saying if you have suffered from miscarriage or baby loss or anything like that, I wouldn't recommend it. I have never had that. I have had friends go through that, but I've never been through that myself, and I found it really, really difficult to read. But by the end, it's a really, really lovely book. This is The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman, and this follows the story of a couple who live on a island where there's a lighthouse, and it's just the two of them, and it goes through their personal lives trying to have a baby and a whole thing. I'm not going to go into it too much because I don't want to ruin it, because it's a while since I've read this one as well, and I can't remember how far in something happens, and I'm not trying to be cryptic, I just don't want to ruin it. But if you have suffered baby loss or anything like that, I wouldn't recommend it. However, I really, really enjoyed it. This is one, I enjoyed it. Now looking back, I can see that I enjoyed it. When I was reading it, I found it awful. I found it heartbreaking. I cried pretty much every single day reading it. It's that sort of book, but I feel like I would definitely recommend it to like people who haven't been through that. Like, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who has, because it's really raw and it's really like intense. So for that reason I wouldn't, but if you haven't, I would. Another one that I would really recommend that also made me cry is Jojo Moyes' Me Before You, and I'm looking down because I've written it down because I don't actually have it. It's another one that I've given away, but that's another one that made me cry my eyes out. It follows the story of a lady called Lou Clark, and she is the carer for a man in a wheelchair, and before he was in a wheelchair, before he had, I think he was in a motorbike accident, he was so adventurous. He would, you know, jump out of planes and do all of this stuff, and then he had this accident, he was in a wheelchair, he was paralysed from the neck down, and it follows the story of Lou trying to get Will to be more outgoing, to accept that his wheelchair doesn't define him, all of these things, and she is like trying to get him back to his former self. And she is trying to do this by taking him on all of these fun days out and just trying to, you know, get him back to his former self. This is another one that has been made into a film. I haven't seen the film. I'm almost, for the same reason as where the Crawdads sing, I'm almost reluctant to see it. I think it's on the telly now. It was brought out years and years and years ago, but I'm almost reluctant to see that film because I love the book so much. I don't want the film to ruin the book for me. The next one that I would recommend is After the End by Claire McIntosh. This follows the story of Max and Pip. This is another one that I read absolutely years ago, and the story has really stuck with me. They basically have to decide whether to keep their son on life support, to keep their son on treatment for, I think it's like cancer or leukemia or something like that, or if they should stop the treatment and basically let him die, like let him die in peace. And it's the two sides of that, so I can't remember, it's ages since I've read it, I can't remember if it's the mum that wants to keep on fighting or the dad, and they are working through what they should do and what their futures look like, and it follows their stories as the mum and dad of a very poorly little boy. And it's another one, I will spoil it for you, it's another one that ends really nicely, and the story of the two characters, and like it follows both of them, like one chapter is from the mum's point of view and then one chapter is from the dad's point of view, and then there's the end, and I'm not going to spoil it. It's so hard to talk about books, like I want to say and this happens, but I don't want to ruin it in case you want to read it, because how frustrating is that? Like I'm desperately trying to not give spoilers, but that is a really lovely one. It is, parts of it are like tear-jerking, parts of it are really lovely and heartwarming, and it's just their whole life and, you know, going through this awful thing with their son who is so poorly. And then the last one that I would recommend from this like lovey-dovey, rom-com-y, heartwarming type of book is this one, The Summer of Impossible Things by Rowan Coleman. This is like a family version of The Time Traveller's Wife. So if you like The Time Traveller's Wife and About Time and Benjamin Button and all of those sorts of films, then you will really enjoy this one. It follows two sisters. Their mother has recently died and she was from New York, and they travel to New York and they find out all about their mother through one of the sisters being able to time travel back in time. And it follows the story of them just learning more about their mother, learning about her backstory and how their mother met their father, and all of these lovely things. The like back in time section is in like the 1960s, so it's like really fun and vibrant, and they're in New York and all of this good stuff, and then like parts of it are in like modern current times, and it is just a really like full story in that things that happen back in time are also happening now, and it's just really lovely. If you like those sort of Time Traveller's Wife, it is very similar to that. It's a similar sort of back in time and meet someone, and then current time meet them again, and all of that sort of backwards and forwards. So it does take a little bit of concentration to like know when you're back in time and know when you're forward in time and like current, but really lovely. This is another one that I would recommend for like reading around the pool, and it's just a really sort of lovely heartwarming book, and it's more about like families and like the mother and the sister like family dynamic, rather than like husband and wife, where it's like The Time Traveller's Wife where it's like the his and hers. This is like mother and daughter, so I really enjoyed that one. So on to the like thrillery books, and my favourite thrillery type of book that I have ever read, and I recommend to anybody who says that they want something that's more gripping and more, I don't want to say gory because this one's like a psychological sort of thriller, is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I don't know how to say the name. It's another one that I don't have. I will put a picture of it up here. And this follows the story of a woman. Is she called Alicia? Can't remember. Anyway, it follows the story of a woman, and her husband was found stabbed, and she was the only one that was in the house, and she is in a mental asylum, and it follows her doctor and the whole dynamic of trying to figure out what happened to this woman's husband. I'm fairly certain she's called Alicia. I'm just going to say Alicia, and if that's wrong then please do forgive me. But it follows the story of that, and she's kept a diary, and since her husband died she hasn't said a word. So she is the silent patient, that's where the name comes from, and it basically just follows the story of her doctor reading her diary and trying to figure out if she is innocent or not, because the doctor thinks that she's innocent, but obviously she's not talking, so he's trying to figure that out for her, and he's trying to get her out. And again, it's another one that sort of goes back in time, so like the diary extracts are as if it's happening like in real time, like it's not just like a written diary extract, like it's happening, if that makes any sort of sense. But as with most of these sort of thriller books, there's a big twist at the end, and I was like, no, this can't be happening, no, this can't be happening. And then it's the end. I wish there was another one, because I have so many questions. I have so many questions that I need answering. But if you are wanting like a thriller that you want to just sit and read in one day, because that's what I did, then The Silent Patient is fantastic. And then the last two are both by the same author. I want to pick up more from Lisa Jewell, because honestly these two are fantastic. So we have The Family Upstairs and Watching You. These are so good. Like, these are quite chunky books, and I read these in a couple of days. The stories are, I would say, like in my mind I get them confused quite easily, because they're quite similar in that in each of these books there's a lot of characters. There's a lot of this person's wife, and then the wife's best friend, and then you've got your children and all of your children's friends, and like I suppose it's like real life in that we all know 70 million different people, but when it's written down in a book it's quite hard to follow, so it does take a lot of concentration, both of them, and I assume that's just her writing style. But for something that truly grabs your attention, for something that you think you figured out like halfway through and you absolutely have not got it figured out halfway through, then I would say that these are really, really good ones. If I were to just pick one, I would say The Family Upstairs is probably topping Watching You, but honestly both are very, very good. The Family Upstairs was the first one I read, I think. I can't remember, but really, really good. They're really sort of easy to read in that the chapters are quite short, so you get quite a lot of information quite quickly. But I do also find that that makes it quite overwhelming. For somebody like me who likes to read before bed, I found those ones a little bit much to read before bed, because then I would be going to bed with so many questions and thinking like, oh, I'll just have one more chapter. You know, that old problem that we all have if we read with any sort of regularity, I'll just read one more chapter because then it'll answer that question, and then you get to the end of that chapter and suddenly you've got 10 more questions, so then you're like, oh, I'll just read one more chapter, and it might, and you can just go on until morning and you haven't had any sleep and you've just been reading all night. That is a problem that I had with those, because they're so in-depth and because this just seems to be so much happening on top of each other all at the same time, and you're being fed so much information about whatever the story may be. It was very hard to put down, and that is a good thing and a bad thing, but very, very good stories and very, very good like attention grabbing detail. So those are my 10 recommendations. If you have any books that you think I would like based on these, or you want to recommend to me, then leave them in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, then please subscribe down below. I am posting every single day next month. Not anything to do with books. I don't think I have any book content planned, but if you like makeup and beauty and things like that, then there's lots of that coming next month. But until next time, thanks so much for watching. Bye!